On this week's show, discussing BIM, Beyond the Hype, with Johnny Fortune from National Institute of Building Sciences. That's NIBS for those of you that don't know. In this week's news, more jobs, what recession, autonomy, and more. All right, we're back. I got Jacob Dalbora back with me. My boy Jacob, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. Just spent the past week at the beach. So if you're listening on the podcast right now, go to the YouTube channel, see my new tan, enjoy it, hit the subscribe button, get it back on here.
You like that? I got my boy getting him onto YouTube for me. That's right. You can check out Johnny's good face there because we're going to have a conversation with Johnny as well. And we're going to get into some BIM, baby. Like, we're going to go BIM deep here, aren't we, Johnny?
Absolutely. Love this topic. Looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for having me here today.
It's great to have you. Jacob, as always, bringing the BIM. That's what we're going to start calling you, bringing the BIM, man.
Yes.
The show's got to get back to its roots. That's where we got started. But before we do, we got to pause for the cause.
For the last 20 plus years, I've been talking about this mind-body connection and working a lot on focusing on things like stress and nutrition and sleep and exercise and how that affects performance and how that affects longevity. We've been focusing on this peak level of mental, physical, and emotional performance. Construction in general is a highly stressful environment, and you see the stress. And you always get the "I'm fine" answer, but I always try to dig a little deeper because people say, I haven't been sleeping great, and I'm really eating crappy food, and I feel anxious, I feel depressed, I feel, we'll start to really get into those conversations and figure out what's going on.
Those are the critical things people need it's the little steps, right? You're not here to replace a mental health diagnosis, right? You're here, but there's some resources you've got that can help people kind of figure out if, hey, they might be headed down towards that one.
Right, exactly. Barring some mental health diagnosis, or if you think you have a mental health diagnosis, please go seek someone out and get that help and that diagnosis. But barring just a diagnosis or you're really struggling or having suicidal thoughts, this isn't going to help you probably. But to check in and see where am I now and how do I keep from going down that rabbit hole, there's some great resources. And if you go to brentdarnell.com/resources, first there's an emotional intelligence and physical symptoms survey test. So we get your emotional profile and we get your physical profile based on physical symptoms, and we can tell how your body's working. And then we can correlate those two. And if you're experiencing burnout, it will show up in probably both of those evaluations. It's free. You just download it and do it. And just so see where you are. And if burnout's the top 2 or 3 that pop up and show up there, I would pay attention and start to really look at what are you doing with stress and nutrition and sleep and exercise and daily reflection and those kinds of things that we know we need to do to keep us healthy and keep us sane and keep us on track.
You've got to check in with where you are. You've got to work on balancing. It's not about the diagnosis. It's about preventing people from getting too far down the road. Like most of our construction folks that listen in, they take care of their cars. They keep them up to date. This is no different. You've got to put in the maintenance on the body, on the mind, because you're racing this car around the track, right? We're not going to change that we're a bunch of race cars out there, but we can change that we do the right maintenance, take the right time, and really check in.
One more resource in there. It's the Tough Guy Survival Kit. Guy being gender neutral. It's specifically geared toward more field folks, but there's a really great chapter on stress management and peak performance in there. And it talks about meditation techniques and mindfulness techniques and breathing techniques.
Well, those are all great resources. If you didn't hear that before, it's brentdarnell.com. That's BRENTDARNELL.com/resources. Check them out. They're there for free. Brent, thanks for joining us on this pause for the cause. All right, you heard my boy Jacob say it. You got to go to youtube.com/@the ConTech crew. And don't tell me you're doing it. I get to watch the subscriptions live. So somebody surprise me. Drop a comment. I may comment back. I may not. You never know. But drop us a line. Get on there. Smash the subscribe button. We need those listeners. You want to watch it. we know you have to go back to the office. So rather than work, watch the crew talk BIM, baby. At the ConTech crew, we focus on technology that solves industry problems, and we've always believed in our sponsors. So much so that I went to work for one of them. So today, I want to talk to you about Join. Every construction project is a unique prototype, and it's actually shaped by thousands of decisions that impact the owner's business case, design, and the budget. Today, the communication driving these decisions is disjointed across all the stakeholders. Work happens in email, Excel, estimating, resulting in delays, waiting for decisions, waiting for access to information, and sometimes that information is outdated and incomplete. Managing the expectations of the team and keeping the project moving forward is a constant challenge, and a lot of times drives skepticism amongst the contributors. Join empowers general contractors to build with confidence and maximize the potential of every project by connecting these owners through new workflows that fit into your existing processes. We bring design teams and trade partners into a single platform. There's transparency and collaboration in the decision making, which builds trusts and sets projects up for success. You might be asking yourself, do you need another tool? Well, let me tell you, Join fits in seamlessly with your processes and your other tools. In fact, we're here to help those other tools. Regardless of your estimating system or your project management process, Join will be a valuable added resource without disrupting those other systems and your teams. Check out Join, the collaborative project delivery platform for the built environment. Learn more at join.build. And we're back. All right. So Johnny Fortune, National Institute of Building Sciences, NIBS for short. Tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, I know for a lot of us in the BIM world and in my world, we know who you guys are, but I think we only know it like from afar. So tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll kind of dig into that, the NIBS world.
Sure, happy to. So I've got a long history in this industry. I actually grew up in construction, so my family had a small construction company. So even as soon as I was able to get on the job site, was spending plenty of summer and sometimes weekends on the job site. And then spent about 20 years in AE firms. So at one point I moved over to the dark side of design from the construction side, and really just have a lifelong passion and enjoyment of technology. So really found my niche in adopting technology, teaching others how to adopt technology and utilize technology. So again, 20 years in design firms, and then about 10 years of volunteering. So after working so many years helping other people adopt technology, I began to realize, wanted to work at a higher level in terms of driving standardization. So heard about the National CAD standard and National BIM standard, and want to get involved. So I spent about 10 years of my life volunteering on those efforts and several others with NIBS. And then also worked a couple years as a contractor with NIBS, working on rewriting the VA BIM manual and many of their other BIM requirements. A decade plus of standards development. And then recently, last year, came on as professional staff with NIBS.
Okay, so that is a storied history, because you have, seen the transformation from, where probably CAD and CAD standards weren't even, fully adopted. So that's kind of a big arc. So if you go back to the beginning, and what are the similarities maybe right now between what you saw with CAD and CAD standards and now BIM and BIM standards, and sort of those progressions?
Well, I'd say the similarities are there's always the people factor of change with adopting any new technology. So I do remember helping people move from hand drafting to CAD a long time ago, and from 2D CAD to 3D CAD, and then from 3D CAD to BIM, and then beyond BIM for just construction documents or some PDF output to more intelligence in the models. And so each one of those changes require really people warming up to the idea of emerging technologies and that change. And many people want to get in a rhythm of what they do every day, and so change disrupts that. And so that's been the consistent factor across all of those technology changes is really helping people understand the benefit of it, and then helping them warm up to the idea of that change, adopt that change, and then become proficient in those changes.
Yeah, that it is a natural arc of what you have to go through, right? Like you're doing things, you're doing them well, you're producing. So to introduce a disruption does cause a slowdown and a relearn and kind of getting that proficiency back up. What are some of the reasons that folks, especially since you've been from the paper to the CAD, 2D CAD to 3D CAD, what are some of the reasons people would want to take that pause and learn to do it? Because there's always this like, we were talking about it pre-show. It's like, we got to get rolling, right? We've always got to get work going.
There's always the promise with technology. I mean, at the root definition of technology, it's about making things better, right? Every technology that is introduced is supposed to improve upon the current state. So I think there's that underlying promise of things will be better, be more efficient, be easier. In terms of BIM, many marketing promises, and many people have certainly failed to realize some of those benefits. But at the heart of it is it's understanding the value that it's going to bring, to the individual, to the organization, and then also broader to the industry as a whole.
I think that's really important. It's supposed to be better. There's always a hype cycle, right? Like there's always the overinflation. There's always the early stuff. But honestly, as it progresses, it gets better. And if you didn't catch up, you're always farther behind. So that's part of it. Yeah,
and you always have people too that are maybe in the later stages of their career, and then so they they're evaluating how can I take on this huge learning curve and adopt this technology, and certainly we are an industry that is driven by milestones and deadlines, and so people really have to make a concerted effort to think outside of their current project and their current task list, to say how can I spend some get past the learning curve of adopting technology. I'd say in most cases, in my experience, when people do get past that point and they make, they get past that point mentally to adopt technology, and then they start putting forth the effort to learn it, they begin to reap the benefits of those changes.
That is a great way to encapsulate it, because I think there is an opportunity there. Before I toss it over to Jacob, give people an understanding of what is the National Institute of Building Sciences, NIBS for short. What is it, and what is its kind of mission? And then I'll let my BIM brother here jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we sometimes jokingly say, NIBS is the best kept secret in Washington, D.C. I mean, many people know what we've done over the years, but have not necessarily made the connection of who is doing that. I would say most people in the industry, even in design as well as in construction, are familiar with that. There's a national CAD standard. And so that is a product of NIBS for many years, and there's also a national BIM standard. So those are things that we have done, but who we are is a little deeper than that. And approximately 50 years ago, Congress passed legislation which brought the National Institute of Building Sciences into existence. And we have our vision is to improve lives through the collaboration to integrate science into the built environment. And we have this mission of serving the public interest. So we're nonprofit. We're not a federal agency in the sense of traditional federal agencies, but we have enabling legislation that uniquely positions NIBS. An example of that is also we have six of our board of directors are appointed directly by the standing U.S. president, and we produce reports that goes to the president annually. A couple of reports making recommendations for the built environment and the construction industry. So I like to think of us and talk about us as a convener. NIBS really stands in the gap between both public and private sectors and we stand in that gap to help bridge communication and facilitate discussions to bring about solutions for the built environment. So we're a convener. We don't propose to have the answers to everything. We really, when we bring people together, much like yourself, we convene people and subject matter experts to come to the table to not only identify the problems, but also identify some action items and how we might address the problems.
That's awesome. Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fantastic. And first off, so the president of the United States knows what BIM is, or should know what BIM is, because that's amazing. I would love that.
It's been in the reports for quite a few years. Yeah. So
okay. So I love the people factor of change. That was like the first quote I wrote down. Like, that's huge. Going into it though, you guys have pushed this BIM standard before, have gone through this, and really even on one of the CPC roundtables that we've been on, there's a two-sided debate kind of going on in the industry of, hey, we need standards and there should be standards and we should have standards. And then it's like, but people, we do have standards, but you're just not using them. You're deciding to ignore them because you don't think it's a good standard. And so I like this most recent change. You guys have gone through a whole series of new task force and really starting to put this together. Can you dive into a little bit of what you guys have coming out with the new BIM standard, kind of how you guys are oriented it, and really kind of dive into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you're right in what you're reporting back from when the sessions you've been in on this debate is, yes, there have been 3 versions of the national BIM standard, and we're getting ready to release version 4. It's in the final stages. So you're right. There's been 3 versions there, and it a lot of people know about it, but it has not necessarily been widely adopted holistically. There's pieces of it that's been adopted. And one example that I think has been widely adopted is the BIM execution planning. Like, so if you talk to almost anyone for a project that's got BIM, if they're serious about it, you probably can find a project execution plan or a BIM execution plan somewhere where people have sat down and figured out, like, these are the applications we're using. This is how we're going to deliver this information and how this information is going to be able to be exchanged. Some of that work begun at Penn State many years ago, and some others, in academia and in the industry. But that's formally a part of the National BIM Standard. So there's a full module or full section coming out in this upcoming version that's devoted to BIM execution planning, with improved templates, improved tools to help people work through that process a little more quickly. So yeah, there are these type of tools that have been there, and then the adoption of some of these tools have been at differing scales. But this idea of diving deeper in BIM, and I think in our discussion we're diving deep enough that we're talking about standards, and that is not necessarily a popular or exciting topic for a lot of people, right? But the fact of the matter is that standards are all around us, right? I mean, we from our TVs being able to transmit the video signal. One of my favorite examples is a cell phone or a smartphone, right? Is that all I need to know is your number, or mine, right? I don't need to know what carrier you have or what model phone you have, or even if it's updated to the latest iOS, or what apps you have installed. I just if I have your number, I can call you and it works, right? Or you have mine, you can text me and it works. And that only works because there's this underlying standard that all those who develop those, the apps, the phones, the updating the operating systems, are following a set of standards. And that's what makes it work. And that's really what makes and will continue to make technology work in the built environment and across all the stakeholders. So we certainly at the Institute put NIBS, we put a high emphasis on standards, because that's the underlying network, if you will, that allows us to connect information and share information. And so we continue to push towards open data standards. And that's a big premise behind our national BIM program. It's a big drive behind the national BIM standards, which is the product or the output, where the program is this higher overarching entire program that involves stakeholder engagement and adoption. But no question, standards are important. They're not always exciting to everyone, and the development can be long and arduous. It always lags behind technology, but standards are key to making it happen. I'd love to share just one other analogy of standards. So I was reading about this recently. And I didn't know this, but many engineers would probably know this example. Leading up, to the Civil War, there was the railroad systems that were evolving, right? And you had all these local and regional areas that were, building their own railroad system, to be able to move materials and goods. And of course, that became really an important piece leading up to the Civil War. But what I did not know, and maybe I just didn't pay attention in school, what I did not know is that there was not really a standardized rail gauge. So the distance between the center line of one rail to the distance of the center line of the other rail was not standardized. I did not know that. I was fascinated with this issue that the nation had. And it plagued the nation a little bit even after the Civil War, right? And there was, I think, there was a British standard of 4 foot 8.5 inches, but then here, there was all these different rail widths. Well, we immediately know that lack of standardization causes issues, right? The more you want to expand that network of the railroad system, it creates more and more issues. And so I dove a little deeper and found that, people were coming up with all kind of solutions to fix it. Somebody came up with this mechanism that was greatly expensive that detached the cars from off of the wheels and picked it up like a crane and put it over to another one to be able to transfer from one rail system to another. Well, needless to say, that was so expensive it didn't last. And even President Lincoln, at the time wanted to standardize on a 5-foot rail. And I think it already had that fully planned, but then realized that these pieces, just wouldn't connect. Ultimately, as you know, they did standardize on, 4 foot 8.5, and that's the standard rail gauge for a traditional rail system. But my point in bringing all that up in a long analogy and long example is that when I'm reading about this, I'm saying we're doing the same thing with BIM, right? We're like people coming up with all kind of solutions. Many of them that are expensive solutions to try to get, connect these railways, right? And to connect this network of information, not rail cars, but now we're dealing with information. And so we have a lot that's hit the market, many expensive solutions, but at the heart of it, if we could just get the rails the same width apart, which is that's the deep dive into BIM. That is that open data standards underneath that all of this is built upon, then we could more freely share information.
Well, that is a wild analogy because I would never have thought that Johnny Fortune from NIBS would reference the same analogy on this show that was actually used by Fred Mills from the B1M. With the B1M at the core, used the exact same analogy in a different way to talk about how the US was built on that. But until we realized the standard, we didn't realize the transformation. And that it's funny because the analogy with him and we moved away from how we had looked at infrastructure. And that is, that railway infrastructure is what made this country grow so fast and be connected and do those things. But we've actually since gotten away from that, right? And the Europe and the UK in particular, and that British standard, they continued to grow it. They're actually using it and using high-speed railways in many ways to connect their populations to deal with new problems. And we mused for a little bit on how we aren't doing that here. And we're looking at, and this is probably, I got to probably dip and dive and dodge as we say this, but we're looking at electric cars and electric trucks and other things like that when we're primed for high-speed rail. We're primed for mass transit. We're primed for these other ways that are, tried and true and work and actually move people and distribute populations better. So interesting that you two brought those same two standards up. So if anybody missed that show, go back and listen. We actually just re-released it over the July 4th holiday because, well, yours truly needs a break. So taking that week off to celebrate and bringing our British friends over to be on the show, which is quite for the 4th of July, which was quite funny. Obviously, we are recording this one before that one comes out, but that is really cool, Johnny, because honestly, a lot of the things in what we do that aren't flashy are super powerful to the eventual speed and capability of technology. You talked about it, from paper to 2D to 3D CAD to BIM, right? People had to slow down to learn, to get better, to then achieve what we now know with, BIM is far more capable than even the 3D CAD in many ways to speed up layout, speed up percent completes, speed up accuracy and quality and all of those things and help us achieve our true abilities there. So it's got to be difficult to know that, like, hey, we're here, we have this. And it's funny, I on a different podcast had a chance to work with John Stebbins, and that was where in our pre-calls to that I was introduced to that Penn State BIM execution plan and the existence of it and what it looks like in a formal adoption. And I'll tell you, at first look, man, I was like the rest of these naysayers. Oh, I can't do this. Like, how can somebody outside of BIM, because I'm a BIM outsider, right? How can I even adopt this or think about this, right? And so putting myself in the role of like an owner or someone that's on the other end of this, it was foreboding. So I'm wondering, like, how do you approach someone like me? Like John took a real deliberate approach with me to help me break down that execution plan, help me understand it. So to those people that are like, okay, this thing exists, but it's scary, what are some of the steps? What are some of the things that they can do to sort of get past that?
We, on our end, are trying to make things as simple and easy to adopt as possible. And it just reminds me of one highlight with with the National BIM Standard, this version, there's a whole section on project BIM requirements that really didn't exist before. And during the development, it really is it's really aimed at owners to help them make sure they go through the different stages and pieces of things that they should require. And then, when we were looking at that in the development, one thing that I mentioned to the group that was working on it was like, well, what about the owner that, they don't necessarily want to think about all these things and maybe they don't even know what to ask for? What's the default setting for them? Like, if they just want to say, like, okay, this is great. However, I don't necessarily even understand all this, but I want to put this in my contracts, right? I want to adopt this. What is the baseline adoption, default settings, default template that I can at least get started in this? And so part of that was revised to basically say, here are all the pieces, but here is the example of the default settings. Like, if you don't make a decision about any of these, here is the baseline of what you should be asking for, in terms of BIM for any given project. So I would say, on the development side, there's that piece. We're trying to look at everything to say, well, where is the easy button? Where people can almost plug and play where it makes sense. And then the other piece of adoption, we are focusing a lot on owners, more specifically serial builders, if you will, owners that have multiple campuses, multiple buildings, always not necessarily an owner of one facility. They've not done anything for 10 or 15 years, but owners who are active, in the construction industry, always adding on or modifying or fully facility maintenance and operations. So a big focus is to get them to adopt it and make it as easy as possible for owners to adopt it, because we realize they're at the head of the supply chain. They're the head, that they're the ones that have the most to gain. They're the ones that carry the most risk. They're the ones that's providing or accumulating the capital to build or renovate the project. And when owners are fully aware of the benefit of BIM and have mechanisms to put that into their contracts and into their requirements, the rest of the supply chain really follows suit. So the owner perspective is one that we really put a lot of emphasis on the National BIM program. But we also have different sections, different focus areas of the National BIM program, and one of them is project team implementation. And one of them is owner, and we're spending a lot of time there. But the project team implementation, I think, is where your question was going to. How the average worker and person in the field and construction, how do they adopt it? So what that team came up with to drive adoption is really defining clear metrics for success. And again, I guess back to the point earlier about how people adopt change and why they adopt change, why they would be open to it, is that they see some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, that's saying it's going to be better, and this is a way that you can measure improvement. So we'd like to, and this is early stages, right? This is not developed yet, but we'd like to develop metrics that are really measures of success for BIM adoption. What has it done to your bottom line of your business? What has it done for, in terms of your return on investment, or what has it done in terms of your productivity? So I think those are key to adoption. And so I would say, I would encourage anybody who is on the front end, even in the absence of those metrics being fully established, I would say we live in a data-driven world now, and that's ever increasing. And it's really important for, I think, the workforce to skill up and to continue to prepare to look at things through a lens of data, because that's the future of this industry. That's the only way this industry will survive. I mean, there's shocking statistics of the estimate of what's happening with our workforce in the next 10 years. Massive reduction in workforce, right? And so we can't train enough people or get enough people in the workforce to cover this estimate of how we're going to be reduced with so many people retiring from our industry. So other solutions have to be considered, and one of those is like robotics on and automation on job sites. And I know some people may be concerned about whether machines are taking our job, but the fact of the matter is that we simply don't have enough people to fill the spots in the industry. And so if we think about a solution like automation, anything that's automated, or a solution like robotics to help with certain areas of construction, or even GPS controlled equipment that's been around for quite some time now, we have to think about, we have to have good data for those things to work properly, and we have to have good standards to get good data. So we were promoting standards not as an end, but it is a pathway to get to where we're trying to go as an industry.
So I have been giving a talk, Johnny, for a long time, and even being a BIM outsider, as I got to know the technology that we were talking about being an accelerant in the field to productivity and all those other things, it became really, really clear to me that at the foundation of them was good modeling, was good BIM, because without it, you really can't achieve those things. Great GIS can tell us where we are, but it can't tell us where in the ground to put things, and it can probably tell us how level we need things, but then it can't tell us where we're going to lay things out, where we're going to do those things without good BIM. And again, robotics, most of the robots we see right now are doing some sort of BIM layout, or they're doing some sort of automation based on being loaded up and connected to that. So it's a foundational piece. And I think that's, to me, where the industry needs to take a deep breath, slow down, get standard to then speed up, to your point earlier, right? We keep going back to that.
Yeah.
You got to, I think I've said this on every episode or every podcast and webinar I've been on. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And if we're going to get there, that's how we're going to do it. Jacob, I'm going to jump this over to you for our last question before we jump into the news of the week, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the whole idea, we talked about BIM and 3D CAD, and I think really where we all see the value, and if you're a BIM person, you've kind of seen this for years, is it's analytical data inside of it, right? There is data that we can actually pull and analyze and then make the decisions off of. So you've seen fintech for years, and like the financial industry took off with analytical data. Hey, how do we make business decisions off of what we're seeing? Well, now we're getting to the point where, like Jeff said, hey, we can put it in the field. We can actually use this. We can make decisions if we're actually correct in the field too. But it's that standard. And this is what I love, because I love the railroad, because it's a matter of how often they had to slow down to change to a different standard to keep going. And then once they removed that and everybody was on the same page, it's accelerated the whole thing. It's even to the point of, hey, do you remember Blu-ray versus HD DVD? And this was like a fight for like 2 years. Who was going to be the standard? And literally they had two products. You could have a HD DVD player and a Blu-ray player, but you would have to buy each one. When finally one took over, then it's like the mass adoption happened. So I think this like whole idea standard is going to be really good. I also love it from the fact that you talked about a default position. The biggest issue with adoption from owners is they don't know where to start, and they're scared to start because they don't know. So even if there is this default, there will create a learning curve for them. They will still have to understand, but they don't have to become the expert in that area to just start adoption. And I think that's going to really give them something. Hey, let's put it out there. Let's test it. And then, lean principle, quick decisions, quick changes. Let's test it on the next one, see how it works. But that finally gives them the ability to actually say, hey, we're going to try this. We're going to put this in your hands without, hey, we had to hire a consultant, which, hey, come hire me. We'll make a standard for you, or we'll show you NIBS and put it together for you. But they would make every single owner had a different standard set up then. And that is your, hey, how wide is this track going to be? Because when you go from different project to different project, well, we can't analyze all the data together. And when are we going to be able to get to the point that we can say all the construction data coming from BIM in a certain area can give us answers to those decisions, or give us decisions to those questions? Because when are we going to understand supply chain really matters, but BIM gives us the insight to supply chain. It's when we have that standard. So I'm really excited about this. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, great perspective. And it just, you're talking about an owner, and it reminded me, somebody just said this to me the other day, was like they have just observed years and years of owners being slow to adopt a technology. And I thought on that a little bit, and I thought, well, if we're asking them to go out and purchase more software that they can only use one small piece of, I can understand a reluctance, to adopt technology. And I would say that's kind of where we've been. Sometimes we gauge adoption by, are people going out and buying a particular software package? That's not the type of adoption I think that the National BIM Program is trying to put forth. We're emphasizing open data standards, because what we really realize is that the ideal scenario is we stop telling people, you got to go buy this package, this tool, that technology, you got to have this subscription for all this stuff to work. What we're really trying to get into is say, well, allow the designers to choose their software application of choice. The contractors choose their tool. The owners have their tool, choose their tool. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this information is being able to be passed from one stakeholder and went through the phases of a project to life cycle without loss of fidelity, without the information becoming corrupt in any way or undependable in any way. And I think if you have that conversation with owners, that's very different than purchasing a software tool, right? And so I would say that's the type of adoption that we're going to get to, because when I've talked to owners, they're all about making things more efficient. I mean, I don't know of an owner that I've talked to that would push back on the idea of being able to build more for less, right? Or being able to run more efficiently, right? Or being able to, with their OPEX, being so much more efficient that they could push some of the funding from OPEX bucket over to the CAPEX bucket so that they can do more stuff during the design and the construction phase, which is a very small amount of what an owner looks at from an entire life cycle.
Yeah, I've always seen it as basically standard buildings is you're going to spend about 3x on the operations of a building that you spend on construction. And then you go to something like healthcare, you're going to spend about 9x of the construction budget over 25 years to operate that building. So it's amazing how we are making decisions for such little things in a CapEx budget, but then it affects OpEx for the next 25 years 9 times. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think, education is a big piece, but again, open data standards running through the thread of a project lifecycle through multiple hands of different stakeholders. And we certainly have the data security and cybersecurity things to make sure that are in place and that people have access to the right data. And really nothing more, nothing less, right? They have the information they're supposed to have. They're able to pass off the information and it doesn't lose fidelity. Those are things that we need to work through from a standards perspective. And it really needs to be open data standards because, in my current role, I really don't care what application people use. I'm hoping to get to the finish line of that information was able to be exchanged throughout and it's able to be used downstream without having to be reproduced. And I think you guys, know this. You've seen this in the industry. People are modeling the same things over and over again because data is coupled to one application or another, and that is such an inefficiency and so much waste in our industry that we have to eliminate.
Yeah, I think the problem there, Johnny, is we don't see them having to lift up and remove the wheels and put the new wheels on to get on the new track, right? We're doing that in the background, and it's extraordinarily costly, if not more. And I think the interesting part of what I heard from that is that, with different tool sets and different use cases, if the fidelity of the information is there and I can consume the part I need, then I can use whatever tool I want. And that really allows flexibility, but the data to be that underpinning. And ultimately, I'd love to see where the industry has that open data standards, has that fidelity and ability to use the data to do so much with what, we do in operations and we do in facilities maintenance and we do in construction, but also then truly take this, what are we, like an $11 trillion industry, and actually become a data enterprise, like an enterprise. And because if you can do all of that, and yes, there's security and other things, but with the ability to anonymize that data, we can look at this industry as an enterprise as a whole and actually move forward. We move forward as an 8-legged, 9-legged, I don't know how many verticals we have, and we move this octopus forward in different directions, and ultimately we just end up overextended. Yeah. Right. And we're out over our skis everywhere we look. And that really goes to creating enterprise, right? You use the cell phone standards before. You don't care who I buy. You can call me. Right. And in all honesty, like Apple doesn't honestly really care who I use for my SIM card, right? My SIM card is a standard SIM card. It works. And yes, they like to sell them to certain purveyors to help move and grow. That's fine. Same thing. It's an open data standard that works. And then you can use it and leverage it as an industry or as a company inside of that industry to advance your own company. There's nothing wrong with that, right? This actually creates more winners, more consolidation in some respects of data. And it's a powerful piece. I mean, Hopefully that's, somewhere in your next report to the president, and they can look at how this could help us.
I think one area where NIBS is uniquely positioned, and again, we're nonprofit. We have a charge, through Congress. We report to the president, and so all of that positions us in a place that we don't represent one stakeholder group or another in the built environment, right? So we're not focused on architects, and we're not focused on representing engineers, or we're not focused on representing just tradespeople or just the owner, right? We're focused on the entire industry and what's happening in the entire industry. How can we raise the baseline overall for all project stakeholders? And so we bring a very holistic view, and we're trying to address issues from a holistic perspective. And as I mentioned earlier, a part of our primary role in doing that is convening experts. So it's not something we can do alone. Right? It is something that we realize. Well, there are folks that are software experts, but there's also folks that are cybersecurity experts. There's other folks who are, design experts, or contractors. We don't fill all those individual roles. So the way we see the National BIM program really making a difference is convening experts from all of the different stakeholders, basically having an equal voice, having representation across all the stakeholders to work towards a solution. So shameless plug, we do have volunteers that participate on different committees, and it's really through that collective knowledge base and those diverse perspectives that real world solutions and great ideas begin to evolve. And I would say it's an important work, not only for today and to make things more productive for today, but I mean, there is certainly, the big push for digital twins for the built environment. And what does that mean? What does it look like? What's the difference between digital twins and BIM? And, there's a lot of ideas out there. There's a lot of movement. But again, we're seeing, well, there's really lacking a standard specifically for digital twin for the built environment. And we know that if we don't get out in front of it a little bit, history will repeat itself, right? We will find in digital twins heightened state or peak. We'll find that we have some of the same challenges we have with BIM. And moving beyond digital twins, for one building or another or campuses, the idea of smart cities is reemerging. That kind of silenced out a little bit, and now we're kind of beginning to see that is reemerging. All of these are built on having, not only good models, models, the three-dimensional aspects and information attached to it. Good data is what enables all of these, and then certainly there's how is AI going to impact the built environment and this construction industry. So all of those pieces we see at the root of it. We have to have good standards to make them work.
Yeah, I think at the root is good standards, and you had to know that I was going to say this, Jacob. But if I could influence you there, Johnny, at all, I would. And the marketers will hate me for this one, but it's a data twin. If you strip back everything we do, everywhere we do it, it's data. That data requires a standard to be usable. And please, if you're listening, put your money where your mouth is, or actually not your money, your time, because time is money, but time is important and valuable. So, I would say get involved. Who knows? The company you might help might be your own. In the end, but if we look at the world from the perspective of a data twin, smart cities, smart facilities, smart cars, smart infrastructure, all of that, if you peel it all back, the golden thread is that data. And without it, we're not getting anywhere. And we need to stop data waste. We're storing tons of information we don't need, and that costs money. Right. Data centers cost money to run, and your dark data that you're sitting on in the background that's absolutely useless is just costing you money. It's just really slowly bleeding you of cash, and people don't see that either. So I think underneath there, if we can increase quality of data, look for data twins, then we've got a shot overall to reach what is super scary when it comes to the cliff ahead of the number of people leaving the industry, the amount of infrastructure we need, the amount of facilities and homes and infrastructure and power and others. It's just, it's huge. So, with that, I could go on for hours with you, man. I think we'll be revisiting y'all soon here, but I wish we had more time, but you're going to come with us into the news. So with that, let's get into the construction technology news of the week. Jacob, what do you got for us, buddy? It might be looking like it's right online.
It is. And to tell you the truth, it's even crazier as it continues to go. So Construction Dive coming in with the first one is construction job openings increased 68,000. So this article looks at what the Bureau of Labor Statistics released for May and April. And it stated that we are at 383,000 jobs that are open within the construction industry. The crazy statistic about this, it was up 68,000 openings from April. That's incredible. I mean, that is what, almost 18% increase, 20% increase on it. And it's like unbelievable that stagger happened in a month. Not to mention that, Jeff, we've talked about numerous times on the show how many big projects are coming to the States. So now we see consistently the $1 billion price tag and multiple $1 billion price tag hitting the States, hitting across the States. I think there's 5 new NFL stadiums being built in the next 3 years, all of them the $1.5 billion plus. Where is this labor coming from? And it just keeps getting worse for us. So all the way back to the beginning of the show, how do we actually make sure that we start filling these positions? It might not be eliminating somebody that is actually working, but we got to find a way to eliminate the open positions so we can continue being effective.
Man, we're just losing. We're not going to win this one. It's just, this is that, where you wish there was a mercy rule. This is why in some sports they created the mercy rule, because we're just not going to get there. It's just not going to happen. Like, we're going to consistently and continually fall behind in just about every area. And our only opportunity is to take a deep breath, get over ourselves, look at the technology and the automation and the abilities that we have to do this, because you're talking about 5 NFL stadiums. Most people listening in used to love to hear James on the beginning of the show talk about Texas A&M and whatever NFL game was going on, and we used to rib and to Josh Bode and Rob McKinney, we used to talk about Atlanta being a poor place to watch and a tough place to be at. People love NFL. You want to see it in new stadiums. You want to go. They're not going to make it. It's just not going to happen because they're fighting now with EV battery factories, the EV factories. You're fighting with all of these different, and we're fighting for a limited set of resources, and you just can't squeeze any more out of it. I expect that this is just the beginning of those numbers. And we're going to have to look this in the face and work on it. Right? Really, really, really work on it. Yes, we can bring more people to our industry in far more advanced jobs. And I mean, that to me is the critical part of looking at technology, looking at BIM, looking at other things like this, is that automation takes jobs. They do. But they take jobs that are the lowest value to the entire organization in most cases and elevate those same people and those new people to new, much more impactful, much more purposeful jobs, right? Look at Josh Bone and I had the opportunity to do this. Look at going through a supermarket checkout and look at self-checkout. And self-checkout was fought forever by the unions. And one of the union members came to me and talked to me at an event and said, listen, I fought it personally until I sat down and sketched it out with an owner of a new place. And he showed me how he could increase his volume, which decreased the number of checkers and baggers, which, by the way, are the 2 lowest value, lowest purpose. Like, those people don't get a lot out of that job, and they pay the least. and he could increase his staff in pre-prepared foods and stocking and inventory management and all of these other great areas by increasing the throughput of the store itself by putting in self-checkouts. So consistently increase their volume and their cash flow and increase their jobs, the number of jobs they had and the quality of those jobs. So there's an opportunity here for us to look at the same kind of thing in construction and to be the place of choice. So you got me on my high horse. Johnny, you're shaking your head. You're into this, huh?
Oh, totally. I mean, that should be incentive enough for, construction and design companies and organizations to move more towards digital transformation and digitization, because the entire workforce that's coming, entering the workforce now, are digital natives. They are interested in things being connected. They expect it. They expect everything things to be automated, to work smoothly, to be able to use technology. And so if we hope to meet some of the demand for the workforce, then it incentivizes us to move towards digital transformation everywhere that we can, because we've got an entire workforce coming that is expecting it. And they won't stay in the industry if they're not able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're at a position right now. We really need like a stopgap, because it's a few years away before they're really in the position of actually presenting the solutions, putting these ideas in people's ears, and then also the management being young enough to listen to them and really be like, okay, let's adopt it. Let's go for it. Let's do it. You can go perform it. We're still in this position where the management is still a little hesitant adopting it, a little doing it. But I will say that innovation and adoption does not come out of opportunity. It comes out of necessity. So we're hitting the point of, it's no longer just an opportunity to go innovate and be adopting these things and then win more jobs. It's almost necessity now to innovate, to adopt, to go do it, because you can't perform, you can't finish. And very soon you're not going to be winning jobs because you don't have anything to actually go perform and do with.
I'll go one further, Jacob, and just go ahead and say it. Your technology and your technology stack is no longer your advantage. It's table stakes. And if you're not there and you are listening to this and you have a family-owned company, and we have tons of family-owned companies out there, big ones, and you are losing market share and you are passing less wealth to your future generation if you are not addressing this now. So if you are in a leadership role and you think you can ride this sucker out and pass it on to that next generation, all you've done is devalue what you have and lose market share day by day. And and that flywheel of loss is coming. Look at ENR 400 and look at the movement in that area and look at who's moving and who's not, and look at the consolidation. And if you think you're immune to it, then please pass off whatever it is that's allowing you to get through the day like that, because I'd love to know that blinder or whatever it is that's allowing you to do that, because it's just not going to happen. So I get to take a little bit more of that aggressive role there, Jacob. So
that's fine.
What do you got next for us, baby? Because I actually really love what you got next.
So it's funny. Another construction dive, it kind of fits right into the whole conversation. But for almost a year now, we have been like on our heels, like waiting to see if it's going to happen. But this one talks about what recession. Nearly all sectors see strong construction spending. And it's a good article. It's got some good stats in it. The ABC and AGC kind of contribute to this article. But if you get into it and scroll down, I want to show you non-residential spending in a 12-month change is up 25%. For a year, we've been sitting here wondering, are we going to go into recession? And for over that past year, it's actually increased spending 25%, which is insane, which is why we have this whole shortage in labor increasing so big too, because the projects keep coming. I love it though, because for some reason, the rate hikes from the Fed has almost created a sense of security for people to keep going, even though it's costing a little bit more, even though it's kind of making this whole issue of like, well, we got to spend more. It's allowed people to keep spending. It's allowed them to keep doing their projects. They haven't stopped and said, oh my God, recession's coming. We're just going to stop. They've kept going. This is interesting. I'm wondering if it then says 2024, far less certain of what it's going to hold. Are we going to be doing the same thing in a year from now saying, holy crap, we're still going?
Man, I think we're gonna be. This is just one of those ones that is it a cart or a horse or a chicken or an egg? Because honestly, recessions are somewhat self-imposed, right? We start saying it's going to happen. So then we believe it's going to happen. So then as consumers, we start spending as if, or not spending as if it's going to happen. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But the train that's on the tracks in so many areas, EV batteries, the battery factories, the need for onshore of high level modern manufacturing when it comes to the chip manufacturers, semiconductors, all of those things, like it's just pushing it, man. And I think construction for one of the first times has turned to those numbers and said, we're bullish. We don't see this the way you see this. And by the way, when you talk about exactly what we just talked about with all those job openings and all those needs to fill, we're going, look, you can say that's coming. And in certain sectors, yeah, is that recession, is a slowdown coming in some of those areas? Sure. And if I'm in those areas, I'm worried about it. But I'm saying, let's go grab them. Right. I think you will see a downturn when it comes to the service industry and some of that discretional spending. But I think you're going to see that you'll see a lot of spending in areas that fortify our economy and are going to be looking as a place to land for jobs and things. So, and I have said this, and I'm kind of stoked that I've been saying this. At the cornerstone of the economy and the ability to level out the sine curve that is a recession is the built environment. It is the A, the E, the C, the O, and the manufacturers.
Yep.
We can level this sucker out, right? And we're huge. We said this. We're like an $11 trillion industry. That's a heck of a percentage of the GDP that can be stable. And if we can do that, we can provide that to our country. And that's a unique opportunity as an industry. And it can take us out of the doom and gloom and the, dare I say, the butt crack look of bending over as a plumber or a carpenter and be this technologically advanced, data informed, stalwart industry that's the backbone of our economy. And I've said that from the beginning, and I'll say it again. So, Johnny, I'm wondering, what's your thoughts on it?
I mean, it's an interesting stat. It almost defies logic, right? Because you got, it just does. You think with the cost of money going up, that we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing. I guess part of probably what is offsetting that is we have landmark legislation with massive amount of money going into infrastructure. We also have even newer legislation with the Inflation Reduction Act, which has pieces and components that relate to construction, which are incentivizing really people to continue to build, to renovate, to make these changes. So I think the construction industry is there's such a great opportunity in front of us here, and even in even in the light of some uncertain times for many sectors, I'm excited about the opportunity that is in front of the construction industry. It really is. There's a lot of funding that's just, again, landmark, never been available to this magnitude. And we have, I agree with you, Jeff. We have an opportunity for the construction industry to really excel itself here.
Yeah, and I'll point to that too. So in that article, up from last year, 12 months, manufacturing's up 100%. So it's doubled what it was 12 months ago. And we were on fire 12 months ago. So it's amazing that this is happening. But come with that legislation that does the EV and the semiconductors and has pushed all that, it's a trickle down effect. So you move all these people to new areas of the country that aren't very built up. Now, conservation and development is up 31%. Lodging is up 40%. Sewage and waste disposal up 22%. So the infrastructure, water supply up 26%. The infrastructure that's needed to support people moving to those areas is then the trickle down effect, and everybody keeps living off of it. It's fantastic. It's almost like it was a really good bill to push because it just kind of affected everybody across the board. Now it's just hang on tight.
And there's some very innovative minds in this industry, and I know that there has been the challenge now with we have a massive amount of office space, and a lot of people are not returning back to the office. And so, again, another great opportunity for the construction industry is to adapt and innovate and change and repurpose and reuse some of these. So that's really also creating a bit of an opportunity for this industry. If we don't see a massive return to work, what's going to happen with all of this office space? How can it be used? And enter the construction industry for repurposing some of this.
Yeah. TI from, office to living. What do we have? We have a housing crisis, an affordable housing crisis. We have all of that. There's an opportunity there as it lays out. And I think actually that's the, where they say 2024, Jacob and others, you look at it and you go, okay, well, great. Cause I think as that levels out and we see are people going back to work and where are they going back to work and how is this working, then all of that space will be there for us to dig back to. And I didn't even think about it before, but to both of your points of the cost of money is going up, I think that's actually showing the innovation that happens in value management by these construction companies. They're starting to get better and better at predictability, driving down costs by getting to scale and learning from that. So the cost of money is driving, Jacob, you said it, necessity for innovation. Because if my, chip and manufacturing facilities cost is going, yeah, eventually I'm going to hit a point where I'm not going to do it. But those construction companies are innovating and going, we're going to give you other ways. Here's volume, here's scale, here's prefab, here's modular, here's great ideas to do this. And so again, it's leaning on our innovation. It's leading on the beautiful minds that run this AECO manufacturing, whatever you want to call it, industry. So awesome stuff, man. We're going to move on to mine. And I'm excited because I'm going to take both sides on this one. So mine's Digital Construction Week. And this is thanks to my boy, Taylor Cupp, and for writing the article or being a part of the article and being interviewed in it. He didn't write it. It was written by Sinead Morgan, but Taylor's at the center of this. And it's all about autonomous technology is defining a new era for the construction industry. And this is unique. We talked a little bit about in pre-call about how some of these studies work, but this is 1,000 technology decision makers from commercial general contracting firms in Australia, the UK, and the US. And it's really talking about the role of autonomy, where it's being valued. And 84% of firms are using autonomy in some part of their operations. This is where, Taylor, I'm going to argue with you a little bit here. I don't think that means what you think it means when it comes to that. Yes, there are areas where people are not getting involved, but I don't know that they're as highly valuable as what that statistic might do. I might assume. I think there are far more areas for us to get autonomous and to get better at this. It's also, of those 1,000 decision makers, they are technology decision makers, which means in general, they have adopted and believed in technology. So of course, you're going to see a higher level of autonomy there. Where I think this gets really, really used is 30% of utilized autonomous technologies requiring no human interaction. That's interesting. But then the opposite is that only, I believe it's 37% of respondents found fully autonomous robotics drove sustainability benefits, the leading priority of the next 3 to 5 years. And then yet only 17% of those firms are investing. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. right? They're believing in autonomy, but they're not necessarily investing in autonomy yet. And I think that has to do more with foundational technology like BIM, right? Like, you've got to make your investments at the base level to drive it. However, I do believe that taking a look at autonomous possibilities drives the next generation coming in to do much higher value work for us. I think as progress tracking, as daily reports, as time cards, as more and more of that moves into a semi-autonomous factor and pulls a golden data thread, we're going to be able to allow our individuals to have their heads up, looking around, making decisions, which is what we're great at as humans, that are based on the value of the project that we're bringing to fruition, right? Some projects value speed, some projects value quality, some projects value different things. And the data can inform us so we can make better decisions. Jacob, we were kind of talking about this at the beginning. What are your thoughts?
And you hit on it exactly. Is the underlying thing I get out of this article is the fact that BIM is going to be at the forefront of all of this. For any of this stuff to work and work efficiently, consistently work on every project, the information coming from AE firms and those models have to be well defined and well built. It's going to be the fact of we're going to be picking up the train and changing the size of the wheels or the width of the wheels each time we hand it off. And to redo that each time to use autonomy is not going to work. But I think AE firms need to have a wake up. They basically jumped into the BIM ocean and learned to swim. And now the industry's caught up to them. Well, they need to learn how to swim quickly and fast, not just, hey, I can doggy paddle. The problem we have right now is the fact that the models that come out of design are only built for 2D documents. The only thing they're built for. So there's so much gap. That's not going to help us do an autonomous robot to go print on the slab. When it's not correct, when it's faked, it's going to be problems, but it has to be changed. I think there's a lot that the AE can look at and say, crap, we can make this project better. We could save money by doing it correctly on our end too. And maybe it is to owners. Hey, pay them a little bit more for a better BIM model that then is translated into construction and used. But there's a matter of, hey, you're only paying them for 2D documents. That's what your contract says. That's what they're going to do. I don't blame them. But to get to this point that this article talks about, we have to have that foundation, like you said. It has to be done well. And it's going to be I think that's where it's going to come to head over the next few years of innovation through contractors. Well, we need it better from the design teams.
That's a whole separate episode. Johnny, I know you're on both sides of that. Give me a little bit of your opinion before I jump on there and get myself in trouble.
Sure. I mean, it's been discussed for quite some time now about it seems like ever since really BIM began to emerge, this idea of a model as legal document, right, is transitioning from that two-dimensional paper as the deliverable. Where and when can the model become that legal document of record? And things I've heard a lot from the construction realm is it's very frustrating that when they do get a model, there's usually some kind of disclaimer. They got to sign everything away. You can't actually use. You can't depend on it. It's just, it's the elephant in the room, in terms of information handoff. And I will say part of what we see for the National BIM program is one of those focus areas that I mentioned earlier. One of them is actually legal and insurance. So we want to bring legal and insurance to the table, and I think we will get there, but we've got to get over the hurdle of the model being used as a legal document, as a requirement of handover. Some projects have done it, but it's not widespread. And I will say that the Federal Highway Administration, some of the work in infrastructure, it's moving that way. So I would say to the entire industry, get ready. You may have adopted BIM for your own organization's benefits, like what are the benefit and the value we get out of BIM, but realize we graduated. And now BIM has to be used for the industry. It has to be used for the entire project lifecycle, not just one stakeholder or another. And I think a path to that is, and I know people don't necessarily like the word requirements, but a path to that is that the model becomes a requirement. It becomes a legal document, and we transition from the 2D world to being able to use this data. Not only use it, not only pass it off, but eliminate all these disclaimers and waivers and everything everybody has to sign away and say, yes, we can actually start using this information.
Yeah, I think there's contractual, there's legal responsibilities, and those are some of the, kind of shadow areas, I think, or the elephant in the room. But I think the shadow of the elephant is many of the folks in the A, the E, and the C are going to have to change their business models. Their business models are based on the waste that we create by lifting, if I get extra cash for lifting up and taking the wheels off and moving them on, then why the heck am I going to change? I'm not going to change, right? I'm going to keep making money. Show me how I'm measured and I'll show you how I act. Well, I'm going to keep making money. So we really have to look for that really dark area and look at it and say, our business models need to change. We starting to see that in certain types of contractual relationships, IFOAs, IPDs, those types of things. And we need those foundations, like look at the foundation of trust is some sort of contract, is some sort of agreement there. But behind that dark wall is, why why am I going to change, Jacob, to multi-trade layout through a robot when even my digital layout has always been a part of my scope and I make money off of my scope, and I'm not going to give that to anybody else. That's just foundationally where the industry has to go through, and we got to move the cheese, man. If you haven't heard, we're going to move your cheese. And get ready because it's coming. But it's going to be hard, and it's going to take some bumps. So that's a whole nother show. I think we got 2 new shows out of this, right? Like we've got some shows we can do out of this. I'm going to wrap us there. I think we can go on forever and take this last one that's kind of interesting. This is chief.com, and it was Gen Zers saying you're recruiting them wrong. Here's what they really want. And I think this blew me away, man. Gen Z will account for about 30% of the total workforce by 2030. Man, I was just getting used to where we are today. But attracting and retaining talent from this generation, born from 1997 to 2013, will be key to any company's long-term success. We see this year, generation over generation, and really the shifting needs, requirements, beliefs. Look, we always believe that this next generation is too entitled. We believe they want too much. We believe they're whiners. I used to do a talk on this. That's been historically there since, BC. Like we've always said that this next generation's just that. That's just how we work. As we get older, we get a little bit more realistic. While we're younger, we're a lot more optimistic and a lot more brazen. But I think what was interesting for me in this article too, is that we're seeing a lot more comparisons between Gen Z and baby boomers because they came through the Depression. They've now come through COVID. So they've seen and have a sense of insecurity. And I think this is where, people look at them as, one of the examples was, well, they're less likely to apply for a job if you don't show the salary range. And people think, oh, that's because they value themselves too much. They want too much money coming out of school. No, it's actually that they value transparency and equity. And so if you're willing to post it on your website, then that is core to who you are and what you do. It's also that, look, they want stability. And the reality is look at inflation. We didn't have it as much in our generation. They do. The reality is they watched and witnessed close family members losing jobs during the pandemic. But that's an interesting statistic that I think construction can flip. We just talked earlier about recession proofing and being resilient through it. We provide that stability. We also see that this generation, unlike the millennial generation, is actually wants to go back to work a bit more. They don't want to go fully back to work, but like this hybrid ability and this ability and understanding to get together with people is big for them, right? I think because it was taken away at a point in which it was valuable to them. So there's an opportunity to bring them in there. And then looking at their social values, ESG, right now we look at cost and schedule. Very, very soon here, that's going to shift to ESG. And man, is that a great bait to bring people in, because this group wants purpose. And man, where else can you drive purpose than being a part of the built environment and making sure that it's built with environmental, social, and governance built into it and equity built into it. We've got an opportunity there. I talked to it before about changing us from butt cracks to something new, something valuable. Comes up again, man. So Jacob, tell me what you think.
It's great. I love how this whole show has kind of been lead-ins into the articles that we had also, but we didn't plan it at all. The whole idea with Gen Z is coming in, like Johnny said. I call them the iPad generation. They're one of the first ones that literally, when they were 3 years old, 4 years old, started getting an iPad in their hands and started playing with it. And that's going to change so much on how we work, because they're willing to adapt. It's almost natural for them. There is no like hesitation to them. If they don't like the app that they're using, they're going to delete it and download the next one and try it out. And it's great. That's because it makes you be right from the get-go and makes you actually look at the end user and kind of go to them, which is now why they are saying, this is what we want and this is how we have. If you don't want to provide it, we'll go to the next one. That's fine. I will say, there's a quote at the very end of this, talks about leaders being young and hip, and the whole idea of just being young and hip for the sake of it. Well, it states that we don't want leaders to make a cringy TikTok dance video to attract us, right? That's great. But as long as you can work the Zoom call during our training and orientation, yes, that is huge. Think about the leader, the manager of a company or even a department getting on the Zoom call and they're doing this like, I can't figure out why am I muted over and over and over. And it makes you lose trust in that company. You know that they're not going to be able to adapt. So I love it, because that's almost like a home run hit right there of stop going to TikTok and thinking that's how you're going to attract somebody. But really throughout the company, understand how technology can help and use it. That's how you're going to attract them. That's how you're going to impress them when they actually do get on interview calls.
Yeah. Johnny, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, skimming it. A couple of things that stand out to me is their desire for transparency, and their desire for connection, which was an interesting that a higher percentage of them, in comparison to millennials, wanted to be on site working as opposed to working fully remote. So, I mean, those are things that stood out to me, and I guess it points back to all that we've discussed in our session today. Is about the expectation of digital natives for things to work. It has to certainly be genuine and transparent. To your point about the TikTok video, like a lot of times businesses try things to attract a different generation, but really what they're looking for is transparency. They're looking for connection, in-person connection, as well as the technology connection. And so to your point, Jeff, I think it's a great opportunity. We have the need for the workers, for employees. It is a great opportunity to utilize digital transformation to attract a whole new generation.
Yeah, a whole new group. And I just came out of a conference, the SoBuilt conference, and we talked about purpose, belonging, and community. And that has been a thread I've been hearing, thinking, and reading in these articles and reading other places. And if you really want to bring that next generation, and again, not lose your wealth, not fall behind, not slip back, it can't just be a vision and a value on your wall. It has to be a part and parcel of what you do. It has to be your belief. It has to be in your core of your leadership DNA, because those are the things that are going to bring those high performers, that next generation, to you in a way that really makes a lot of sense. I think there's a ton, and we've covered it about, the end of remote work is what, Facebook and OpenAI and others are saying. And I'm saying, you're swinging the pendulum the wrong way, folks. This sucker's going to land somewhere really, really valuable that's based off of those principles of purpose, belonging, and community in ways that people wholeheartedly embrace it and make it a part of their company. And those companies are going to grow. So with that, man, I want to thank you, Johnny, for sitting down with us today and coming on the episode. This has been a fun one.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And Jacob, my BIM brother, thanks for bringing it. Thanks for another great guest and another great time. Thanks, man.
All right. Absolutely, Jeff.
I think I'll be seeing you soon, won't I, Jacob?
Hopefully within the next 24 hours.
You got it, baby. As long as I'm going to bring it, tomorrow's going to be a big day. So thank all of you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Johnny Fortune. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to this show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.